This was around 2018 when I was a senior. Me and my friends skipped some classes in the last days of school. You know how we are when we're young. Well, it was a Thursday, and we weren't sure where we wanted to go. We just wanted to enjoy life a bit. We went to the back of the school and climbed a small fence. We decided to go to an In-N-Out to chat and decide what we're going to do next. But in the way, next to the school big parking lot, we found a dude, and his clothes were all screwed up like he got in a fight or something. We never saw him before, so we asked if he studied in our school too. And he said yeah. We weren't so sure if he really did. We knew almost everybody that was from our school, but we didn't think much of it, and we asked if he wanted to join us, and he said yeah, of course. But before we got out of the parking lot, one of my friends said, "Man, you look like you were in a fight with a bear, and he didn't kill you, just left you really fucked up." He was obviously joking, and we all laughed except the mysterious dude. In fact, he didn't like it at all. He got a mad facial expression after this. He started to look around as he was searching for something, and then he said, "Hey, I got something cool. You'll need to see it." And he pulled out a pocket knife and a handgun out of his pocket. We all got scared as hell and looked at each other with wide eyes. My friend asked, "Where did you find this?" The air around us grew thick with tension as we stood frozen, trying to process what was happening. My friend who had asked the question backed up a step, clearly just as unsettled as I was. The guy didn't answer immediately, just stared at us with that same unnerving expression, like he was daring us to challenge him. Finally, he shrugged. "Found him lying around," he said, almost too casually, as if that explained everything. His voice was low, and there was something off about the way he said it, like he was trying to hide something. But we weren't stupid. Nobody just finds a handgun and a knife like that. All of us were wondering the same thing. Who the hell was this guy? One of my friends, trying to keep things light, forced a laugh and said, "Yeah, well, maybe you should put those away before someone sees." But the guy didn't laugh. Instead, he looked at each of us, his eyes narrowing as if he was sizing us up. The knife and gun were still in his hands, and it was clear he wasn't about to put them away. Without warning, the guy suddenly grinned. A wide, unsettling grin that didn't reach his eyes. "I got an idea," he said, his voice tinged with excitement. "Why don't we play a little game?" He flipped the knife in his hand, and we all tensed, our instincts screaming at us that something was very, very wrong. And the parking lot around us felt too empty. But before I could say anything, he stepped closer, holding out the knife and the gun towards us. "Let's see who's got the guts to really skip class," he said, his voice low and menacing. The grin never left his face as he stared us down, waiting for one of us to make a move. We all exchanged nervous glances. There was no way out without pushing past him, and with those weapons in his hands, none of us were willing to take the risk. My mind raced, trying to think of some way to defuse the situation. Then he suddenly said, "Y'all don't need to worry. You invited me to hang out with y'all. I'm not gonna do anything against you." I sent a text message to one of my friends saying that we should just run when I count to 3 with my fingers, and I told him to show the message to the others. When everybody knew what we were gonna do, I counted to 3 with my fingers without the guy noticing it, and we just ran to the main part of the school like we never did before. And when we got there were police cars everywhere around the parking lot in the front of the school. We found out that this strange guy was posting threats against the school on Instagram, with pictures with the same weapons he showed us before. I guess the moral of the story is that sometimes you should just be friendly even with somebody you find really weird. You never know if this can change your destiny for better. I had just started high school, and I didn't know anybody. I felt really alone at first, but in the first week there, 2 people noticed that I was alone and invited me to have lunch with them, so I agreed. They introduced themselves as Harry and Eric, and at first we talked about games, movies, and stuff teenagers like to talk about. At some point, one of them asked a really weird and creepy question. Do you think you could survive if you got on a trap by evil people? What? I definitely wasn't expecting that kind of question, but I just thought he was just into some true crime stuff, so I didn't see any red flags. They seemed cool. They invited me to hang out in a park that same day. It wasn't far from my house, so I figured why not? Of course, I was kind of scared and really anxious, but that doesn't help with nothing. I got there around 2 p.m., and they were there already. Hey, what's up? You want to check out our cool secret place? They said to me. I was really concerned, but they really didn't seem like threats. I hesitated for a moment, glancing around the park. It was a bright, sunny day, and people were out walking their dogs or sitting on benches, which made me feel a bit more at ease. Harry and Eric looked at me expectantly, and their smiles were wide and friendly. Sure, why not? I finally said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. We started walking along a narrow path that led deeper into the park, away from the main area. The further we went, the quieter it got. Eventually, the path became more overgrown, and the trees seemed to close in around us, blocking out the sunlight. I noticed that there were no more people around, and I began to feel uneasy. So, where exactly is this secret place? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. It's just up ahead, Eric said, pointing to a cluster of bushes and trees that looked denser than the rest. Harry pushed aside some branches, revealing a small, hidden clearing. It was eerily quiet, and the air felt cooler, almost damp. In the center of the clearing was an old, weathered wooden structure, like a shed, but much smaller and in disrepair. The windows were broken, and the door hung loosely on its hinges. This is it, Harry said, his voice low and serious. Our secret spot. I forced a smile, trying to hide how uncomfortable I was. Oh, that's cool, I replied while looking around. There was something off about the place, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. But before I could say anything else, Eric nudged me toward the shed. Want to check it out? He asked with a strange glint in his eye. I hesitated, but then Eric and Harry stepped closer, blocking my way back. I was trapped, and the realization sent a chill down my spine. Come on, just for a minute, Harry urged with an insistent tone. I swallowed hard and nodded, not wanting to appear scared, even though every instinct was telling me to get out of there. I took a step toward the shed, the wooden boards creaking ominously under my weight. Inside, it was dark and musty, and the only light came from the small, broken window on the far wall. There were old, rusted tools scattered on the floor, and the air was thick with dust. But what really caught my attention was the faint sound of something dripping. I turned to see where the sound was coming from and noticed a dark stain on the floor, spreading slowly. My heart started to race, and I took a step back, bumping into Eric. What's that? I asked, my voice shaking, but neither of them answered. Instead, they just stared at me with their eyes cold and unblinking. Why don't you find out? Harry said, his voice barely a whisper. Before I could react, they pushed me further into the shed and slammed the door shut. I heard the lock click, and panic surged through me. I banged on the door, shouting for them to let me out, but there was no response, just the sound of their laughter fading away as they walked off. In the darkness, I fumbled for my phone, the weak light barely illuminating the small space. I didn't know what to do, so I pressed myself against the door, trying to figure out how to get out. Then, I heard it again, the dripping sound, louder this time. My stomach churned, and I forced myself to look down. The dark stain had grown larger, and as I watched in horror, it started to pool around my feet. The smell hit me then, metallic, like blood. My heart pounded in my chest, and I fought the urge to scream. I kicked at the door desperately, praying it would break open. After what felt like an eternity, the old wood gave way, and I stumbled out into the clearing, gasping for air. I ran as fast as I could, not looking back, not caring about the scratches from the branches tearing at my clothes. I made it back to the main part of the park with my lungs burning. Then I called my parents and they picked me up. I explained what happened and they contacted the police, who went to the park and found the shed. But when they opened the door, there was nothing there. No stain, no blood, just an old empty shed. The police told my parents about the possibility of it being just a prank, but I don't believe it was. It felt real as fuck to me. And actually, after that day, I never saw them in the school again. Makes me wonder if they really studied there, or if not, how the hell did they get inside there? And why? I'll never know who exactly were them. I was a sophomore in high school in 2010, and what happened that year shocked me for life. I was at the end of a gym class, which was the last class of the day, and I went to the locker room to get ready to leave. And I was the last to leave the locker room. I was getting my stuff from the locker when I hear a voice whispering, "Found you," literally right behind me. I turned instantly with heavy chills, but of course, no one there. I found it weird, obviously, but I just continued to pack my stuff. That's when the door of the room shut, making a loud sound. I jumped, and at this point I got terrorized because I suddenly remembered something that some friends told me, that the boys' locker room was haunted by a janitor that was found dead in the back part of the school. They said that some people told them they experienced creepy things inside there, and some people even claimed to have seen him around the back of the school. I got all my stuff and went towards the door to get the hell out of there. But man, the door wasn't opening. I got freaked out and texted my friends to get some help. And for the next 16 minutes, I sat there, terrified as fuck and trying to keep calm. But it didn't happen. And then the eerie silence was suddenly broken by the sound of a locker bursting open. And a couple of seconds later, another burst open too. Man, I never felt something like that. The room was getting cold at this point too. This was something you see at movies. I tried the door again, yanking on the handle, but it just wouldn't budge. It was as if something was holding it shut really strongly from the other side. I whipped around, but there was still no one there. The air felt really thick now, almost suffocating. My phone vibrated in my hand, and I quickly glanced down, relieved to see a message from my friend, Jason. "Dude, we're coming. Hang tight," he texted. But the relief was short-lived. I heard the whisper again, this time slightly louder. "You don't go." The voice seemed to echo off the walls, surrounding me. My knees buckled and I jumped again, nearly dropping my phone. I could feel my breath coming in short gasps. I got up and shouted for help, but no one was out there. Just me, the unlucky idiot. But then, as quickly as it had started, everything stopped. The lockers fell silent, the whispering ceased, and the cold air dissipated. All that remained was the eerie silence and the faint buzzing of the lights above. I stood there, trembling. Just as I was about to lose all hope, I heard the sound of hurried footsteps outside, followed by muffled voices in the distance. My friends arrived, and I scrambled to my feet and pounded on the door, shouting for them to help me. A moment later, the door creaked open. They had called the janitor too, and he had the keys. "Dude, what the hell happened?" Jason asked with his face full of concern and confusion. I tried to explain, but at first the words got caught in my throat, and all I could do was shake my head and mutter, "Man, I don't know. I really don't know." After a few minutes, I told them every single thing that I experienced in that locker room, and even the new janitor told us that he had indeed seen a ghostly figure of a man near the back of the school at night that same year, when suddenly it vanished into thin air. And he found out about the old janitor later. Man, all I know is that I'll never had enough words to describe how grateful I am for my friends and that cool-ass janitor for helping me out. Luckily, I'm still friends with all of them to this day.